There's a great sense of freedom because when you're blind, you're always worried about where you're walking, where you're stepping. You've always got your cane with you or your guide dog. And with running, you can just sort of forget about all of that. There's a lot of responsibility on the guide, obviously, but I can just focus on the running, and there's a lot of just freedom in that.
Welcome to Kendal Mountain Festival and our coverage from this year's event. Now, I'm here with Yahya Pandor, who is one of our speakers at the festival this year, and also Lauren, who was his guide at our Adidas Terex 10K run yesterday. Now, Yahya, thank you so much for joining us. It's fantastic to see you here in our filming room.
Thank you for having me.
I was lucky enough to be at your talk yesterday as part of our running session. And it would be great just to tell people that are watching this film a little bit about you and your background, because you at the moment are running as a blind runner and you've achieved some phenomenal things, which we're going to come on to. But just give us a little bit of a background about you to start us off.
Yeah, so I'm Yahya. I lost my sight about 4 years ago during the first lockdown, and realised, like a lot of blind and visually impaired people, that I was quite inactive, and took up running as a way to, yeah, get more active and set challenges for myself. And I do really always have to set challenges for myself, otherwise I get bored quite easily. So as a result, I decided to try and attempt to become the first blind runner to run a marathon untethered. And luckily enough, I was successful and created a world record as a result.
What I love about your story was you weren't a runner before you lost your sight. And for most people, that would be a barrier, but you just decided to do something amazing.
Yeah, so the good thing about running for most people is, you don't need any specialist equipment. You can literally step out your door and put one foot in front of the other and run. So unfortunately, that's not quite the case in my regards. I need a lot more support. So I need a guide runner if I'm running outside, or if I'm doing it inside, an accessible treadmill. So it made it a lot more complicated. But luckily, I was in touch with a charity called British Blind Sports, and they put me in touch with local guide runners. And yeah, the love for running just started from there. There's a great sense of freedom because when you're blind, you're always worried about where you're walking, where you're stepping. You've always got your cane with you or your guide dog. And with running, you can just sort of forget about all of that. There's a lot of responsibility on the guide, obviously, but I can just focus on the running, and there's a lot of just freedom in that.
Yeah. And you mentioned that your record, which we're going to come on to talk about, was untethered. So for people that don't know a lot about running as someone who's visually impaired or blind, what is the difference between tethered and untethered running?
So for most blind people, it works slightly differently. For visually impaired, you're tethered to someone. So you have normally sort of a piece of fabric, a piece of string. You can actually just hold on to the other person, and it allows you to stay connected, because the biggest problem when you can't see is you don't know where you're going, where to turn, what's in front of you, any hazards, when to speed up or slow down. And so that tethers an anchor basically to help you be guided throughout the race or where you're running. And yeah, doing it without a tether takes all that away from you. Just try walking with your eyes closed for a minute, and see how that is. And most people would probably struggle with that. A lot of people describe it as like feeling like there's an invisible wall in front of you for a start, whereby you just think you're gonna fall or trip or be hit by something. So yeah.
So I'm going to bring you in at this stage, Lauren. So we need to talk about our Adidas Terex 10K run yesterday, which I understand went ahead in some rather challenging conditions. But Lauren, just first off, you're a guide runner, so you raced with Yaya yesterday. So how do you guide someone when they're not tethered to you?
How do I guide someone? Um, well, so we had the tether yesterday, and I've never actually thought about how I do it. I think what I do is I talk. yeah, so the things that are really, really important is telling Yahya exactly what's coming up. So the main thing that I try and focus on is what's coming up on the ground, the terrain, whether it was uphill, flat or downhill, whether to turn left or right, dodging other people. There was quite a lot of people on the course yesterday, and there was ice as well. So that was a whole nother level. I mean, there was a lot of like anxiousness on my behalf that beforehand, in terms of the weather conditions were quite literally the worst possible conditions to guide in. So I was just wanting to make sure that Yahya had a good experience, and managing all the weather was a whole nother level to make sure that Yahya had a good trail running experience. And I think that was just making sure that he knew what was coming up, the directions, which means you need to go left and right, and I'm dyspraxic, so that's very interesting. And just explaining what's coming up, so the type of terrain, whether it goes from rocky to roads to a track to in the forest, and then over a stile. We had some hay bales, and then just, I think Yahya said at the start as well, making it interesting to see what was coming up and describe that. We didn't get much views yesterday because it was bad weather, but kind of describing what was there to just get a picture and make it interesting for Yahya.
Yeah. And how was your race, Yahya? Because I didn't do the 10K myself, but I had friends that did it, and they told me that the conditions out there were pretty tough, as Lauren says.
It was very tough. Lauren did an absolutely incredible job in keeping me safe more than anything else, and then guiding me through it successfully. But it was one of the most challenging things I've ever done, I think, just because of how complex the terrain is and how torrential the weather was. Because it was more mentally exhausting than physically exhausting. But yeah, it was. I didn't love it in the moment, but looking back, it was a fantastic experience and definitely something I will give a go again. And it's such a different experience to road running. And I think you can't underestimate the differences. They are, I describe them as two different sports in a way. I know they both involve running, but the way they're done are just completely different.
And how to say, I mean, I don't know if this is at all relevant to your experiences in some small way, but I've done night runs and night trail races before now, but obviously I still have sight, I have a head torch on, so there is still visibility there, but it feels very different. When you run, do your senses feel different? What's that experience feel like for you?
So I say I have to pay a lot more attention to my senses. So obviously I'm really focusing on my hearing because I have to hear what my guide is saying. And then it's just the feedback I get from my own feet. I feel like I can sense different terrains through my feet, even through shoes. And it's focusing on that and then adjusting your body to that. So you have to be really in tune with your own body and your senses.
Yeah. And you mentioned that feeling of freedom you get. Was that part of your decision to do your races untethered?
Yeah, first of it was the challenge. And secondly, there is just such a freedom that I don't get in my normal life about not having to worry about where I'm going, how I'm going. It's just, running is... It's like small steps of flight, isn't it? And that comes with freedom, and it's such an enjoyable experience. My partner Jen once said she saw me running and I had the biggest smile on my face and I looked like I was having the time of my life, and I probably was. So yeah, I love it.
So let's talk about your marathon then. So it was the Manchester Marathon, wasn't it? And you set quite an incredible record there. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so I set the record to be the first blind person to run a marathon untethered. And it'd been less than a year since I started running. So to do a marathon is an incredible effort in itself. Anyone that's done one will tell you, don't underestimate how challenging running 26 miles. It's 26 miles, yeah. Because that's a challenging experience in itself, especially for a new runner. And then, the added pressure of trying to create a world record, which I only put on myself. It was my own fault. But it's I like to keep myself motivated by challenges, and this was one of the ways of doing it.
Yeah, and I think in the talk that I came to yesterday, you were saying that as a visually impaired runner, a blind runner, you're using a lot more energy than anyone else would over that distance.
Yeah, so I actually didn't know this, but I met a data scientist at a race a couple of months ago, and she'd done work in that field, and she said, yeah, it takes 60 to 80% more energy for a blind runner to run compared to a normal person. And that sort of does make sense, because she was saying the way your brain tries to analyze where you are, it doesn't have that feedback from your vision, so it's doing it through everything else, and that's where the energy comes from. So yeah, that's why I think when I'm going to a new place, for example, or even when I'm walking, trying to get to those new places, especially on your own, becomes exhausting. So yeah, it's a different challenge.
Yeah, and congratulations on that incredible effort in Manchester. But I know from hearing you speak yesterday that you've got some amazing goals going forward as well. Do you want to share those with us?
Yeah, so I suppose the aim of any runner who races is to get better, right? And that means, in my opinion, for myself, is to get faster. And I'd love to represent Team GB at the Paralympics at the marathon event, and that is my aim. That is what I'm working towards. And like I said, I like having big dreams to keep me inspired and to keep me motivated. So why not go for one of the highest achievements a person can have, I suppose, in the sport, representing your country on an international stage.
And have you got much work to do to get there, do you think, from where
Lots
you
of
are
work.
now? Lots of work.
Lots and lots of work. When you, in part, you have to dedicate a lot of your life to it. Training takes up a lot of time, but it's not just the training, it's the lifestyle change that comes with it. The healthy eating, the good sleep, the limited, late nights drinking, everything counts. So when you set yourself those goals, it does come with a lot of lifestyle changes. But it's not possible without those. And like I always say, it's the people around me as well. Finding the incredible guide runners like Lauren and the others that I have, my incredibly supportive partner, Jen, my family who support me, the people that, take me to those places. It's not a solo effort. It's always the people around you. And without good people around you, it's not possible.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I really took away from your talk, actually, that you talk so much about trust and how, as a blind person, you need to have a lot of trust in the people that support you and people that help you day to day, and that, you come across as having such a genuine kindness, and that you've kind of found that in other people as well.
Most people are brilliant, good people. You rarely meet bad people. And I think part of that is attitude. You're not trained to be scared of people, but you hear so many bad stories all the time. And that's the problem with social media and 24-hour news. You always hear the bad stories, but most people are kind, genuine, good people. Like I met Lauren yesterday, and she was basically willing to risk her life for me.
Yay, Lauren.
going out in a storm on a mountain to run with someone that you don't know takes incredible kindness and generosity of time and spirit, and she was willing to do that. And most people are brilliant like that. And it's about having that trust and learning to trust others, and being vulnerable with each other. It's a scary experience, meeting new people and doing something challenging, and you're being vulnerable as a result. And it's having that trust, that openness, and that communication.
Yeah, I'm going to let you guys enjoy the rest of the festival soon, but just one more thing I wanted to touch on was, Yahya, you mentioned that it can be challenging to find guide runners. So either from you and or from Lauren, how can people get involved if they are out there watching this and thinking, you know what, I would like to do that? How can people get involved?
Shall I start? I got involved through my local triathlon club a few years ago. They were looking for guide runners and guide triathletes. And so I guided someone just for the run section first along the canal. It was a nice flat canal, not like yesterday. And then we did some swim guiding for people with visual impairments. So I signed up for that too. I'm a swim coach and a run coach. And then actually I got some training for guiding for people with visual impairments or blind runners and athletes. And that really helped me gain confidence, because part of the triathlon guiding was on the bike, and so learning how to ride a tandem, and then just getting the training for tethered running and what the runner needs from you, and what what's good guiding. That was really helpful to build my confidence, and just to be able to support people like Yahya. I mean, I'm so inspired by Yahya's story, and just to be able to support their journey and to be able to run and do things they want to do, I think is really important. So yeah, approaching local triathlon clubs, and I think you mentioned England Athletics have some training pathways as well, but just not being afraid, like even if you haven't got the training, I think just giving things a go in a safe environment with other guide runners is an amazing first step.
Fantastic. And Yahya, for you, how can people follow you and your quest to the Paralympics?
Instagram would probably be the best place. It comes under Yahya Pandor 94. But if you search me on Google, it comes up with loads of stuff, so you'll be able to find me that way as well.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, thank you, both of you, for joining us at Kendal Mountain Festival. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you, and well done, both of you, for completing that treacherous icy mountain 10K we made you do. But thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.